Welcome to Beyond the Code, the podcast where industry experts and brilliant legal minds discuss the impact of new emerging technologies. I'm your host, Yitzy Hammer, a lawyer and tech enthusiast. Join us as we explore the legal, regulatory, and ethical issues surrounding AI, blockchain, and more. Get ready to go beyond the code and stay ahead of the game. What are you drinking there? It's not a beer. Too big to be a beer.
It's
too early by you.
מים.
מים. יפה. יש לך עברית.
כן. אני מדבר עברית.
Well, you
I
grew
went
up
to
with that?
yeshiva.
You went to yeshiva?
My parents speak Arabic and my grandparents speak Hebrew and Arabic.
Oh, wow. You're Syrian, right? Okay, cool. We live in Modi'in. It's like a boring suburb between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So,
my friend lives there. Guy
who's
Solomon.
That? Guy Solomon. It rings a bell.
He runs this charity called Tikvot.
Tikvot?
Which helps terror victims helps like people in the army and victims of terror get like prosthetic legs and arms.
Oh, wow.
That's how I got into Bitcoin, actually.
Seriously?
Yeah, I'll tell the story if you want.
How did that get you into Bitcoin?
Oh, we're recording, which is great.
We are recording, but like I hadn't like in my head started like organizing the episode yet. But yeah, go ahead. I always start with like asking people to introduce themselves because like I hate when people read off somebody else's bio. I'll never do it as good as you'll do it yourself. So we got to like really deep dive because like I always, whenever I introduce people as OGs, they're never as OG as your OG. So
thank you. I'm humbled by that, but I don't think I am. I was just in the right place at the right time.
You were in the right place at the right time. Tell me, so how did Tikvot and helping amputees get legs and arms get you into Bitcoin?
I was like 18 or 19 years old, going back to 2010, 2009. And like a lot of the things you do in yeshiva, you're involved in a lot of like charity work with the school. And I met this really cool organization when I was finishing high school called Tikvot. And I was like, it seems like their biggest barrier is they're not accessing the U.S. financial like donation market. A lot of wealthy Jews in Teaneck, all over that want to help. And the biggest issue was that they hadn't set up like online credit card processing and like donation processing and stuff like that. They remember this was like the early 2000s. So they hadn't really dealt with raising money, outside of the U.S.
Abroad.
Yeah. So I met these guys, and over the years, I helped them set up basically a PayPal account. And one day, which was the only way you can do money transfers at the time, this was like if you're younger listeners, there was no Venmo, there was no like easily sending money to people through your bank account that you log in. You had to do wires were in person. There were no ACH transfers. It was literally like mailing them a check or like it was working with PayPal. It was the only one. It had like 95% market share. So I set them up with PayPal, and basically like they raised all this money, like tens of thousands of dollars. And they were flying these kids in from Israel to get these legs in New York. And PayPal just like emailed them. It's like all the money's frozen because we have to figure out if you're a real charity or not. And I was just like, I was devastated.
Classic traditional financial system.
Yeah, and I really felt it was like my fault. Here, these kids with like coming in wheelchairs, and I'm like, am I going to tell them that they can't get their legs now? And so it was really hard for me. And around the same time, I was hanging out in a lot of these internet chat rooms. Bitcoin at the time was very small. Satoshi himself set up a room called #Bitcoin on the free node public internet relay chat system that anyone could create a room and log into. Like Bitcoin wasn't even big enough to have its own server. No one was willing to create it. So I was hanging around in those forums, and someone said, "Hey, Charlie, check out this Bitcoin thing." I'm like, well, it seems to me just like another rebranded version of PayPal. Like, what's so cool about it? The website was very sparse. It was just a white paper.
What does that mean, the website? Like there was a Bitcoin website? Or that was
Satoshi
the chat forum?
Satoshi himself, all he set up was bitcoin.org with the help of some other people. Before he disappeared, set up like bitcoin.org, which hosted the white paper. It was like literally bitcoin.org/white paper.pdf.
Yeah, the domain was registered to like Hal Finney or something, right?
Yeah, it was registered to a bunch of guys like Thamos, and the domain was passed over. And Satoshi himself set up the forums, Simple Machines forums, an earlier version of it that was pretty secure. I personally had liked vBulletin, but he used SMF. And so that's it. It was a confusing project. Who reads white papers? But I had I downloaded the software, scanned it for viruses. I opened it up. Someone sent me like 1,000 Bitcoin just to play around. And I'm like, okay, I'm in this IRC room and I'm like, what's so cool about this thing? I don't understand why Bitcoin is so unique. It's just a software that does balances. You know what I mean? Like it's just literally a PayPal, a downloadable version of PayPal. And I was explained by the Satoshi group that no, if you go to this other file on your computer, wallet.dat, if you notice, it's just constantly getting bigger. The file never like stays the same size. And I was wondering
Because like the
why.
ledger was like updating itself.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it really like light bulb moment hit me. I'm like, so if everyone disappeared, as long as there's two people keeping that chain, it's like apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic moment. I'm like thinking like, wow, this is really, if enough people catch on, this could be really something epic.
Did it hit you right away, or was it like, did it slowly sit in?
I loved the mathematics and the tech of it was completely sound. And I knew that no matter what argument people would come back at me with, Bitcoin and the mathematics and all the science behind the blockchain and how it works with consensus and mining and nodes and the whole deep tech of it. When I fully fundamentally understood it, I spent a lot of time, I like fully geeked out on it. You know, I spent a lot of time reading, and the first couple of days like fell down a rabbit hole. I didn't eat or sleep or anything. But really the only thing you could do was just join the friend community. I wasn't really joining Bitcoin to get rich. It was more of like I was leaving the kind of religion. I was very religious growing up. I was kind of exiting that. And here I found this new community of like misfits and geeks who we had this shared common goal. And it was kind of cool because it was almost like a new religion. But again, it wasn't getting anyone rich. There was literally a Bitcoin faucet where you just enter your Bitcoin address and you get free Bitcoin, 5 free Bitcoin. I'm trying to rebuild it. If you go to 21 million.
I saw you posted about that.
But I can't figure out how to do the human verification without taking people's ID because I don't want to take people's ID.
I'm sure we could work something out offline afterwards.
Yeah. We could work something out. And there are a lot of companies that want to give away free Bitcoin and free crypto to like new people too, like, which is a really exciting thing. But anyways, that hanging out on the forums, a lot of people ask, well, Charlie, like what gave Bitcoin its value? Like why did Bitcoin have value? And if you look at it from the perspective of like, there were always going to be sellers because Bitcoin was given away for free. It was mineable. And because there were always sellers, because there was almost no buyers on the other end, the people that had it, they had to, the first wave of like miners in this is 2009, 2010, 2011, the first wave of people, the only thing we could do with Bitcoin is hold it. We weren't getting it for an investment. We weren't thinking that one day it's going to make us rich. We weren't going to immediately selling it. There was nowhere to sell it. We weren't really doing Bitcoin to like even save it. It was more of like a means of sending money over the internet as opposed to the currency itself. We would say it doesn't matter what the value of Bitcoin is. As long as it has some value, you can send like dollars or gold or whatever over the Bitcoin network and transfer it back into whatever you need to transfer it back into. And that was the value of Bitcoin, not it as a token or a inflation hedge or whatever it became into. So you download the software, go to the Bitcoin faucet. Those are pretty much the only ways to get Bitcoin. You couldn't really buy it anywhere. Mining it was slow. You'd run it on your MacBook Pro.
People were mining it. Otherwise, there wasn't going to be new Bitcoin going into circulation. So like the faucet had to get its supply from somewhere, right?
Yeah, you were mining it on CPUs. This was pre-graphics cards. So this was
I remember like back in the day, I had an old laptop and somebody told me, just set it up with the mining software and you'll make free money. And I was like, I can't figure it out.
The funny thing is, the mining software was the original Bitcoin software. It was one and the same. So as long as you had the wallet open for like an overnight, you would generate like a couple of Bitcoin.
Wow.
But it like heated up your computer and you couldn't run anything else. And so over time, I started selling amongst a lot of other people, which was the majority of the world of Bitcoin at the time was either talk about Bitcoin in one side of the forums or buy and sell things for Bitcoin on the other side. It was a pretty much huge marketplace. And actually, it kind of led to the evolution of Silk Road before Silk Road existed because people were using the Bitcoin forums as a marketplace, and the Bitcoin forum moderators were worried that people were starting to sell things that they could get in trouble for.
Tainting the forums. So like, hey, take this out, go find a private room somewhere.
had led to Ross actually starting Silk Road. He originally posted he needed some developer help on the Bitcoin forum. So, he was around in the early days. So that's kind of like how that led into that. But I worked for my cousin in like
Wait,
a
so you got
like a
your first
warehouse.
Bitcoin from the faucet or from
I got a
from Mt. Gox?
I got
Or
my
Mt.
first
Gox only
Bitcoin
came afterwards?
from the faucet.
Wow.
I think I don't even remember. If someone on the forum sent it to me, or I ran the software and had it myself. So I would go to friends' houses and have them download the software.
Yeah, what did your friends and like family think when you were like talking about this Bitcoin thing? Did everybody think you were nuts?
Yeah, everyone thought I was crazy. Bitcoin back then was frowned upon by the Jewish community and stuff like that. It wasn't seen as something legitimate, even though the early Bitcoin community was really founded in Israel, like Meni Rosenfeld and the
Yeah,
Bitcoin
sure.
Israel Association, like true OGs. Meni was around with Satoshi talking on the forums. He was one of my earliest friends on the Bitcoin forums. We had never even met until like 8 years later, I think. How a lot of the early Bitcoiners we met on the forums, and we met in person. Roger Ver met on the forums, invested in our company, hired Eric Voorhees off the forums, took a train to New York City, met my partner Gareth, who were 50-50 for 3 years. We ran one of the earliest Bitcoin retail exchanges. Like Mt. Gox was a huge liquidity provider, but most people didn't want to wire money to Japan. It was very difficult, and your banks were giving you a lot of crap. So we opened up like a retail exchange, allowing people to buy and sell Bitcoin and deposit cash at like CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, MoneyGram locations, pretty much at a million locations around the US.
So walk me through that. Like your decision to start BitInstant, was it because you were like frustrated with having to work with Mt. Gox, or because you saw how much other people were frustrated with it? I think many people don't even know that Mt. Gox, like people know about Mt. Gox because of the hack.
Yeah,
Either use Mt. Gox or you heard of it because of the hack, but people don't know that it actually stands for, I think, Magic the Gathering
yeah.
exchange. Like it
Mt.
really
Gox.
spun out of nothing, and it became like the predominant or the only crypto exchange in the space where you could buy Bitcoin for a long time until you guys came around
Exactly.
with like some kind of other solution. So like what you started BitInstant, how did you go from like the ideation to actually having this operational thing where people could go to CVS and buy Bitcoin?
BitInstant was born out of the Bitcoin talk forums, actually. Like you said, Mt. Gox was really hard to use. It was 95% of all the liquidity, but it was a website built for trading gaming cards. And the way it worked was you had to create an account, wait to get manually verified. It was one person who ran it in Japan. Once you got approved to fund your account, he would just display his personal Japanese wire bank account details. So you had to go to your bank and like give them this printed Japanese guy's wire details,
And then send
and
cash to his bank,
and then
to his
hopefully
fiat
he'd
bank.
credit, and then eventually you can click buy Bitcoin. It was very
And was it just
cumbersome.
like, were you like constantly sending him like print screenshots of like, here, I wired you the money. Could you like top up my account now?
Many chapters of my book can be written about how we had to do it at BitInstant. So what BitInstant really just was it originally started as fast Mt. Gox Pay. So we were just going to
Okay.
keep a large balance at Mt. Gox, and we figured out that the Mt. Gox API allowed for you to transfer balances from one person to another. So we said, if you give us money in the United States minus a fee, we'll transfer an account balance from our Mt. Gox account to your Mt. Gox account, and then you can buy Bitcoin. Do what you wish. And it was all built pre-vibe coding with my partner Gareth and I off of like a handshake agreement on the Bitcoin talk forums. And I'll never forget when I had like we started like processing money and doing a little, doing some money, but I didn't have more than a couple $1,000s to my name. But I had my bar mitzvah money, which was like maybe $8,000 or $9,000 at the time. So I went to my dad and he's like, this doesn't sound like a good idea. And then I went to my mom and she's like, I believe in you, whatever you want to do, take the money. So use that money,
Mom's the boss.
sent it to mom's the boss, sent it to Carpelas over there in Japan. And BitInstant was a crazy success. Like within one day, we'd ran out of all the money. And so there was this TV, not TV show, it was like a YouTube, or pre-YouTube. It was like a web series called like the Bitcoin Show that this guy was running out of New York City. So I went on, he called me over. I went on the show and I was like, went on my hands and knees. And I was like, if anyone's listening, like BitInstant's doing really well, but we need an investment. And I don't know how to like raise money or do this. This is like 2011. Roger Ver was watching, famous Bitcoin Jesus, and he immediately Skyped me because that's how you spoke back in those days. And he sent me a Skype and he's like, send me your wire transfer. I'm sending you 150K right now. No contract, nothing.
Wow.
And to keep the bit, because he realized BitInstant had become so important to Bitcoin's success. He was such a, like, he would walk around all over California convincing people that he knew his suppliers. He ran a successful business selling computer parts in RAM. Like he did crazy business, like tens of millions of dollars a year selling computer parts in between Japan and America. Very successful. And he was just like putting his whole net worth into Bitcoin. He was the first person to really do it in the real world outside of the forums. And he was the first like he was still a geek and a misfit, but he was like rich already pre-Bitcoin. So he really seed funded every early Bitcoin business like Kraken, BitPay, Mt. Gox itself. Every crypto and Bitcoin business today, Roger probably has some tentacles of investment in from the early days.
Wow.
That's just what he did. And he never questioned it. Contracts came later and they were always super fair. He's the most fairest businessman you could ever do business with. Like, it was really insane. But those were the early Bitcoiners. All of our deals were handshake. Like even Mt. Gox, I was wiring him millions of dollars a month, getting credited. And then we had agreements where he would like credit it based on screenshots and wait for it to arrive, like you said. And we literally settled every week together before like Shabbat. Like every Friday we balanced, make sure, all right, Monday, who owes who, what's going on. And there were times where I had to like fly to Japan. I had to fly to Europe, chase him down because he wasn't like answering his chats. I'm like, Mark, I'm coming there. I need you. We're doing so much business. The demand was
So
really
basically, people would give
pressure.
you their cash, and then you would give him their cash, and you would credit them with Bitcoin immediately.
Yes.
So like you were on.
I made a deal with, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
Made a deal with, if you notice, all over the US, you have MoneyGram and Western Union locations.
Yeah, sure.
And they're in pretty much like pharmacies and they're not like sketchy places. Grocery stores, pretty much all grocery stores. So I made and most people were just buying a couple of $100s at a time. They weren't spending tens of
Millions dollars.
thousands,
Yeah.
even thousands at all. Our average transaction size was like $350. So people would go to our website, they'd give me a Bitcoin address or a Mt. Gox address where they like their account name. It's like if your E-Trade account or something like that, like your account number. And then we'd give you, it wasn't even a QR code, it was a barcode on a piece of paper. You print it out or take your phone, go to the location. The guy at the grocery store, very nice, discreet, instead of going and getting like some groceries or like a bag of M&Ms, you grab some M&Ms if you want. You go to the checkout and he scans your phone or he scans the paper. It adds the amount to the check. You pay however you were normally going to pay. And within like seconds, my software was receiving that there was a transaction. Now, as long as you handed your money over to that teller, I'm going to get my money a week later.
And you get your Bitcoin now.
And you get your Bitcoin now.
Okay. So basically, you were just cutting the process times down and the frustrations of having to deal with Mt. Gox, and you were charging presumably a premium, right?
Yeah. How could Bitcoin be slow? Like, you needed Bitcoin to be fast. You needed to prove its utility.
Right. So before it had that utility, you created it for it.
It was a lot of fun. We were young and we were attracting a lot of attention from a lot of like cool niche places of the world. Like, we were invited to speak at like a Macau gambling conference. Some guy comes with M16s right after my speech and he's like, hey, I own all the casinos. Come, he showed us around every casino and it was like a big flex because they all looked the same, like all the VIP rooms and stuff like that. But then we went up to his office and he got a big whiteboard and he's like, all right, how do we do this Bitcoin thing? How do we make it? I want to put Bitcoin machines in all my casinos. And I said, well, the problem is like no one in the US like wants Bitcoin yet. And these Bitcoin machines don't exist yet. And the software doesn't really exist yet to make this work.
But it's coming.
So I've kept in touch with this guy since, but it's like we couldn't really do anything. It was still so early. It was
so early. Wow.
Through those meetings, we met a lot of other people through Roger's connections in Asia that really helped kickstart the Asian Bitcoin community. Through Roger, I met a lot of other people that end up becoming, I founded the Bitcoin Foundation because when we were in Asia, I met this guy who was like, hey, I'm a mayor of a town in Russia. I own a vodka company, but I invented this like card called the Bitcoin card that I want to make Bitcoin. This is like 2011. So he said, I want to invite all the who's who of Bitcoin to Austria. So he invited me, Roger, Eric. He invited Amir Taki, Gavin himself, pretty much the Mount Gox, another exchange of Bitstamps. Pretty much everyone involved in Bitcoin was like 20 of us in his like Austrian penthouse in Vienna. And he had all this tech, crazy advanced tech for the time, because this was like basically a credit card sized product that had a full built-in like computer Raspberry Pi chip that was running a Bitcoin wallet. None of us had seen anything physical related to Bitcoin at this time. So we were so
Blown
like
away.
blown away. This guy still could
Also,
be
you were
Satoshi
like
himself.
19 years old, right?
As a
19,
kid,
20.
yeah,
You were probably having such a good time. Like you're
best
like
time.
getting out of Brooklyn and you're like getting invited to all these like oligarchs' houses and you're flying all around the world. It's probably freaking awesome, no?
It was the best experience ever. I was meeting a lot of great people. At the time I had met the Winklevoss twins, so they were just getting into Bitcoin and investing in my company. So I was kind of like really high flying with that. We're traveling to Argentina. We're traveling to Europe. The Bitcoin Foundation ended up being founded and had a really large membership base in its first couple of years. Everyone joined. And the idea of Bitcoin Foundation was founded in Austria because I was sitting with Gavin at a coffee shop. Gavin, for your listeners, was the gentleman who Satoshi passed the keys to when he disappeared. He said, I'm Satoshi, founder of Bitcoin, writer of the software and the white paper, mysterious guy no one knows, probably has over 1 million Bitcoin. One day woke up and wrote in the forum post, I'm moving on to bigger things. I think he got spooked, but he said, you're in good hands with Gavin. Though that's the end of the sentence. He said, with Gavin, you're in good hands. And Gavin's this like geeky professor at some university in like Massachusetts. So he's like not, so we're sitting in a cafe and he's like, Charlie, I don't want to be the face of Bitcoin. And I can't, like, I'll work on Bitcoin. I'll be like a chief scientist, but I can't be like the front facing, like the world is going to hit me. He was already invited to the CIA to give a presentation. He was super spooked out. So I said, I'm with you. He goes, I want to get paid too. I said, I'm with you. I want to get paid too. He said, let's start a foundation, model it after the Linux Foundation. I said, sounds great. I said, let's get Roger on board. So Roger was on the other side of the room, brought Roger over. Roger's like, well, I know a lawyer and I know a couple of these guys in California. And Roger knew all the Bitcoin miners. So the other side of the industry was there were people that were mining Bitcoin on CPUs in China, in Asia, starting to do graphics card processing. So there was like a budding mining scene. It was pretty much the only industry, if you will, at the time. So when we created the Bitcoin Foundation, half the board seats went to miner representation because we knew that they were the stakeholders. They were investing the most amount of money and they ran the software that if there were ever hard forks or things that we need to, they would need to be involved. So we started the foundation with the miners. They were our founding partners. I was high flying. I met my future wife, my girlfriend at the time. I was doing like just a crazy, beautiful world. And then in like 2000 and right at the end of 2013, in January 2014, like coming home from speaking at a conference, I was like 23 or 24, like boom, I got arrested by federal agents. And like my whole life changed in seconds. The whole future trajectory of my life, everything, complete watershed moment of life, like in that airport, JFK. I don't know if you want to break for commercials. I'm just joking.
And I feel
But yeah,
I just finished reading this book literally like 5 minutes ago before we spoke. I'm sure you've read it, Bitcoin
which book?
Billionaires.
Oh, what a crazy book.
Did he like he tells like your story at such great detail? Like
Yeah.
did you like work with him on that? Because like he gets in your head.
I was I had when I was in prison. Fast forward the story that I served a couple of years in federal prison, and I was a big fan of his books, and so were so many inmates. So many federal inmates were fans of his books, and they were all over the prison library in a place where like getting books was slow, took weeks because the letters and books and magazines would take weeks because they have to like go through the packages and check to make sure there's nothing between the pages and stuff like that. It was very
wild.
So you couldn't like, so you'd
The
have to like
small
rely
things.
on what, yeah, it's crazy. Well, people did use that to sneak stuff in. And so people would like put pictures and like little stuff between, it's crazy. People cut pages. And so you had to read what you had in the prison library. And I'm like pointing because I have a copy of like every book I read from the first day I'm like in my library now. I maintained a handwritten list and I like bought every book again because books are a part of me. Like I read a lot now. And so I read a lot of Ben's books and I was a big fan of his books. And so were a lot of the people there. And then I just got an email out of the blue from him. He's like, I'm writing this story. I pretty much know everything, but I just want to sit down with you. And I said, yeah, of course. I'm a big fan of your books. I said, you're a really popular writer in prison. And he loved that. And
in prison. I like the end of that sentence. You're a popular.
he's one of the most famous writers I think of our generation. Like
he writes in a very engaging fashion. Like I felt like anyways, but the reason I brought it up is because the last chapter is like talks about your arrest, and so like I feel like I could. Be in the moment. Like it must have been a very.
He wrote that well.
Life-shaking, like you're like coming off the airplane, you're like on a complete high, you just had a great time, like you're on top of the world, and all of a sudden like
it's exactly what happened. And it was like it was when you do the passport at customs, so it was like you're already kind of like a little elevated, like everyone always is when you're going through there, even though you're like coming home or whatever. And just as I was going through it, like it was like one of those surreal moments where like you see like dozens of federal agents running with their guns up, and you're like, oh,
who's the guy? Where is he?
Who's the guy? What's going on? Like I was like, Court. To my now why I was like, Court, look, there's some cool, like they're arresting someone. Like you kind of you always wonder if this is gonna happen like in an airport. Like
your heart
they're running towards
dropped.
Me. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, if you've ever had a gun, many guns pointed at you, it is really freaking scary. You probably had many guns pointed at you.
In a different context, though.
Your context is worse because at least the people that weren't trying to shoot me, I don't know. I think it was for show. It was press there.
Wow.
And it was just a crazy night because after the arrest, I was kind of like paraded around like a show horse. I was booked.
You're like the first crypto arrest, first Bitcoin arrest.
Yeah.
First, like Ross is
crazy.
It doesn't really count because it wasn't expressly crypto that he was arrested for.
Ross served 12 years for something that he probably, I don't know how much, he probably shouldn't have served even like a tenth of that time, for creating Silk Road. There was a lot of bad shit on there.
I think somebody sold a baby.
But my crime was that people were buying Bitcoin from us because we were the only place to buy Bitcoin. And then they were using that Bitcoin on Silk Road. And I didn't file suspicious activity reports, and I didn't have money transmitter licenses, which was like the banking license.
I thought you had licenses until you like froze activities, no?
It's complicated, like everything, of course, is. We had actually shut the.
I'm a compliance guy, so.
So we kind of had the best lawyers in the world. There's a famous documentary where I'm like saying that we spend a lot of money on lawyers every day, so I don't go to prison. And it was like the rise and rise of Bitcoin. And we had the best lawyers, like teams and teams of lawyers we were in touch with. I was actually coming home to speak at a Senate hearing. I gave presentations to the New York Department of Financial Services. All of my work ended up leading to the creation of the Bit license. Like you can see my words in the text of that law.
Sure.
And I was like at their offices all the time. I was on friendly terms with the people that were quietly building my case. That's what was the hard part. I felt like betrayed by New York itself. I was like, God damn, New York. Like you're the financial capital of the world. Occupy Wall Street. We were making something better. We were doing but at the same time, I did break a law. I want to like make sure that message, gets across. Like we didn't have those licenses for the majority. The licenses weren't a requirement up until 2013. And then we shut down the company. And then after we shut down the company, I was running around looking for someone who had licenses that were kind of dormant that could like let us use their license, become an agency of.
Sure.
And I had signed agreements. We had like found a company and everything was signed. We hadn't been able to restart the company yet. And everyone was on board. All the investors were on board and we were going to restart BitInstant. We had a brand new website as I was getting arrested. So like the timing was crazy because everything was built and ready to relaunch. BitInstant could have still been the top exchange of the day. But when I got arrested, I was put in solitary confinement and it just led into like a year and a half of house arrest and a lot of trauma and stuff.
Is it like in the movies? Like, I know that's a very cliche question. Just like being in a prison, is it like all the like?
It's so funny because I'm writing my book now, and if I tell you,
you're writing a book now?
Yeah, I'm like,
all right.
I'm really
give a plug, man.
It's not nowhere near ready. It's still in the early writing phase. I've been writing actually since
another podcast episode pre-launch.
We'll do it for sure. There's still a lot of writing to be done, but like the first night I was even in prison, I was actually in the same range that Jeffrey Epstein was in, the same place. That's why when he killed himself, I was like, wait, I can literally visualize that whole floor, the layout of the cells, everything in my brain, because that's where they put people that are kind of higher profile that they don't want to put in the general population. It's a solitary confinement, but it's like you can be seen by all the guards at all times. Just putting that out there.
Wow.
But they weren't always around either. What they would do is they would play like AM talk radio so low that you couldn't make out the words, but it was just loud enough where you couldn't sleep. It was like the perfect torture. Drive me insane. But they put me with like this, like, first of all, it was in a basement and there was about like a meter, not a meter, like a half a meter, probably like a foot of water, just like off the ground. Just like standing water. And when I came in, I wasn't alone. There was this other guy there because he's a solitary. They say solitary, but sometimes there's one other person there that you share like a kind of wall with.
Solitary with a friend.
It's solitary with you wish you were alone. And he was like obviously on crack or withdrawing from crack. And and I was terrified of him. And he was like on the lower bunk and he was like, don't put your feet in there. You're going to get sick and die. There's no medical thing here. And so then we got some food. And he's like, don't eat anything but the bread. And now that I think about it, I think he just wanted my food, but that was his like secret way of like telling me. So he let me keep just like one slice of bread and he got all my food. And then I'm like, what are you in for? And he goes,
I killed my last roommate.
You joke. But he literally was in a cell with someone else. And he said that he thought his cellmate was urinating on the toilet seat and he attacked him in the middle of the night. And this is the guy that I'm like,
all you have to do is not pee on the seat and you're fine.
I don't think I peed for like the 24 hours. It was like, and I'm like a yeshiva boy, I didn't grow up in this type of world. It was like terrifying. Like to have your life so carelessly in other people's hands at all times, like not just your physical life, but your physical future, like how many years you're going to spend and other things like that. Like they were trying to put me away for 30 years. It's like you have to just give up. But anyways,
did that strengthen your conviction in Bitcoin? Like from like a libertarian perspective, maybe?
The Bitcoin community was the only family that stood by me. And most, like I would say 85 to 90% of the Bitcoin community, and this was pre-crypto, really stood by me. They'd randomly show up, like CEOs of major companies today that you and I know would show up at my parents' basement where I had to like spend most of my house arrest years just to visit me. And I have pictures where at like Bitcoin conferences, they would all come on the train into Brooklyn to like come visit me, and letters and support and the promise of support after I'm released. And I got like, I think I got 195 letters from people written to the judge on my behalf.
Wow.
And he cited those letters in his sentencing of me. He's like, because of these letters, I know you're like a good person and I'm not going to give you what the government wants to give you. Wow. So really like, the Bitcoin community was all those letters.
Wow. Do you feel like you are at the right person, or you're at the right person in the right place at the right time with the wrong mindset? Like, do you think if you're like a little bit older, if this hadn't been your first gig, maybe it was like your second gig, even not in crypto, just like, having been through like different entrepreneurship
It's a great question.
failures, that you would have been like maybe like a more mature mindset and you would have been prepared for what it is that you were being flung into? Because
Absolutely.
I'm thinking back to where I was when I was that age. I mean,
I
I
w-
guess it's not a good example because I was a soldier, but I don't think I'd be able to run a company, and certainly not one that like an entire industry was riding on its success or failure.
Loved it. I was just a ride and everything. I loved every second of it. I was so young. If I was older, absolutely, I would have been more careful. I wouldn't have been as like blunt. I wouldn't have been as sharp at other times. I would have communicated better. I mean, you should have seen the way I ran BitInstant. I ran it like a friend group. There was no management. I wanted to be friends with everyone. I would hire people that I wanted to be friends with. Like that's the
I don't think
worst.
that's a bad thing.
I was always like, I
I feel
don't
like working
like
with people that you enjoy being with is not a bad thing.
that was a big part of it. The early Bitcoin community was very hostile, and you can read the early forum posts. Very hostile to people that weren't open-minded. If you were just a closed-minded, ignorant, like grunt, or like someone following the sheep, not, and so everyone was very kind and open-minded. And the interesting thing was like, yeah, there were some gruff and assertive vibey people, but their bark was always bigger than their bite. And at the end of the times, usually these people that barked the loudest were the most insecure, sensitive people. Like you'd meet them in person and they were like, just wanted to be friends with you. So like at the end of the day, like we all got together at these like early Bitcoin meetups, and that's who kind of like that's who it was. And I wouldn't have been able if I was older. Everyone was young. We were all kids. And even the older people acted like kids. I didn't know that they were like 50-year-olds. Everyone acted like kids. Everyone needed to be the immature mentality.
I think
And
it's part of
so yeah,
the fun. Part of the fun is that like it's not a very mature industry. In the end of the day, like
none
if
of
you're an
us worked full
expert in this
time in it.
industry, you've been doing it for a few years. Like I've been in crypto since 2016. Like it's almost as old as
That's
it comes.
history.
Like
Yeah, that's super
on the
history.
legal side.
The legal side, there were no like laws, there were no clarifications. We were trying to fit our company into like one legal framework. There was no one you could really talk to. No one really knew what Bitcoin was. It was a completely different world. Smart contracts hadn't really been invented yet, so you didn't have like tokens or safes yet and things like that. It was just a completely different world.
So let me ask you a few questions. What did you do when you got out of prison?
So I served, I did like a couple of years of house arrest pending trial. I just went through the whole process. And
So you
then
had internet access for that whole time. So you were able to see like the evolution of the Bitcoin community and crypto community and the
I was
launch of.
giving speeches over Zoom, over Skype, still at conferences. Someone had purchased me like a robot, which was like a Segway on wheels that had an iPad that I could control from home. So I would go to Bitcoin conferences on my robot, and people would literally like
They would talk to you like
hug
through
me and
video
take
chat.
selfies. Yeah, and then like on
That's
Twitter, posted
eerie.
on Twitter. Yeah, it was crazy. And I was doing it all from home. I was like still very much a part of this community, and I was not trying to like anger the government or anything. I wasn't saying anything negative. I was just being like the Wozniak type of guy,
Yeah.
just like the come on, cheering everyone on, like you can do it. Let's keep it going. Because Bitcoin was after I was arrested, Silk Road was arrested. A couple of months later, Mt. Gox imploded. And so the Bitcoin community
The
was pretty
movement
much
needed you.
it was left for dead. We were dead. We went through the worst bear market we ever went through, worse than this one we just went through, and it was really bad. I walked into prison fully believing that Bitcoin, I would come out with Bitcoin was this like fun experiment hacker movement that like is back its in shell. It's like we were pushed back. We almost mainstreamed. We had like our chance and like boom, we completely imploded. We went back on our shell and we like died for a couple of years. There was a lot of amazing technology. Like in those years, like Coinbase was founded and Kraken and a lot of amazing companies. But all the best companies like are founded in the bear market. That's just a given, 100%. And so when I was in prison, I spent a lot of time not really thinking about my future, to be honest. And I'm really happy about that because I lived in the moment. I read a lot of books, studied kind of like the human interactions of people and like the shadow economy that exists there. Tried to laugh every day, in the worst place in the world. When I got out, I ended up not going back to New York. I felt very betrayed by New York. My girlfriend, Courtney, had moved to Pennsylvania near the prison to like live near me and took care of me when I was in there financially and emotionally and everything. So I moved into her house when I got out, and I didn't turn on a smartphone for like the first 8 months of my release.
Wow.
No one knew I was released. I had one Bitcoiner friend who happened to live in this small Pennsylvania town, and I swore him to secrecy. He was the only person in the Bitcoin world who knew I was released. But I was literally, my job was for the restaurant. Like I started off, so like when you get released from prison, you don't just like get released. You have to live in this like halfway house, which are pretty much these older prisons. That's like a melting pot of all the inmates, and you're just categorized by, they send you one as close to home as you live. And then if you prove you're a pro-social member of society, you could eventually move back home after 6 months. Within that 6 months, you can spend some nights a month at home, like on home confinement. If you like have a stable job and you give them your paycheck and you get to keep 75% of it, and you like report back to them and you don't do drugs, and like slowly they wean you off of the halfway house. There were a lot of problems with the system. It's good and it's bad, whatever. But I had this great job as a dishwasher that Courtney got me, and then I was just like picking up eggs on Amish farms. I had the
Cool.
best life. I'm like driving a tractor. That's what I did in prison. I drove snowplows and tractors, and I was in Pennsylvania Amish farm picking up, like literally counting crates of eggs. And I had like FM radio on in the tractor, and I hear like the largest hack in cryptocurrency history has just occurred. A decentralized autonomous organization raised $95 million. It's like 2016. And all the money was hacked and stolen and lost. And I'm like, what is going on in crypto land over there? I need to like get back in there.
Wow. So you
It was
came back to a different world.
came back to a complete, when I walked in, it was just Bitcoin. When I came out, it was crypto. Literally the same day I was arrested, Vitalik was on stage announcing Ethereum in Miami at the North American Bitcoin Conference the same day. That's why everyone thought my arrest was like a shot across the bow type of thing, because it was like the timing was kind of impeccable. And so he was working and building crypto while I was just like thinking that this Bitcoin world was dying. And so I came out, it was crypto. By mistake, everyone found out I was released because I turned on Telegram. And when you turn on Telegram, everyone like sees that you
They get a
joined
message that
Telegram.
you
They get a
right.
So everyone was like, "You out? You out?" It was so funny.
Wow.
And then so I got a call out of the blue from like Brock Pierce, and who took over the Bitcoin Foundation and became like a pretty well-known person in the Bitcoin and crypto space at this
He
time.
launched Neos.
Yeah. And so yeah, he did a lot of early things. He launched EOS and so many projects he invested in. Called me up. I'm like I'm out in another basement. Courtney and I are living in her mom's basement. So I went from like my parents' basement to prison to like mom's basement, but I'm out of prison at this point. So I'm like really happy. I'm like a new person, completely changed person. Like I love, just like when you're all your dignity is stripped away and all your life is stripped away and everything you have in love and then I'm out of prison with a $1 million debt to the government that I had to pay at some point. If I ever made $1 million, then I can give it to them. So it's like I'm completely like living in the day-to-day moment, like not caring what the future whatsoever. Loving my job at this restaurant. Courtney got to work next door in the small town, so we got to see each other a lot. And Brock Pierce calls me up. He goes, I invested in all these. I can't do his accent really well. His voice, but he goes, I invested in all these companies. He goes, I need some CEOs to run them. He goes, so when you're ready, I have a job for you. So I was really kind of him. And so I started working with him a little bit, and him and my friend Steve Beauregard at GoCoin and that whole group of companies. And they've since warped to they have DNA Capital, and that contingency is the Puerto Rican kind of group now. and they all moved down to Puerto Rico and are doing all that really good work there. And then Anthony DeOrio ended up founding Ethereum, messaged me, and he's like, I started a wallet and he goes, and it's a great idea. I said, why is it a great idea? He goes, no one has done it yet. I said, what's so great about it, Anthony? He goes, we accept Ethereum and Bitcoin. I'm like, what?
Emerging.
Who's going to do both? I was like, Bitcoiners are never going to touch Ethereum. Like, that'll never be a good idea. He says, it's a good idea. I need you to help me run it, help me, cheer on. Like, I don't really know what my role was going to be yet, but he gave me a great job I was helping run that company with him. He made me COO at one point, but I didn't feel like a COO. I couldn't go to Canada. So he got the robot from the pre-prison days. And I was walking around the office in the robot.
You couldn't go physically? You weren't allowed to leave the country?
I still can't go to Canada. It's the only country in the world that felons from America. There's some old law because I guess Americans were leaving the country for dodging the draft. They were going up to Canada. So Canada doesn't accept American. They share lists. They share a criminal intelligence list, and you have to get a special thing. That right now I would have to get a special pardon. It's the only country that I can't go to.
Wow.
There's some stuff as a felon. We can't go to Canada. I can't own a gun. I got my right to vote back, which is great.
You come to Israel?
Come to Israel. We were just in Israel 4 months ago.
Oh, wow.
We had the best time. Right. We were there for Hanukkah, the whole week of Hanukkah, from day one to the end. It was the best. My wife had never been there before, so it was her first experience.
Wow. What did she think?
She loved it. She had the best time. Back? Of course.
Awesome.
Through even though we had a siren to flee to the shelter, and even though there was all these little things that had happened, the kindness and the positivity and the amazing food of everyone in Israel was just so blew her away. She had never experienced a country made up of brothers and sisters. Or everyone is your brother and sister, and you could just rely on everyone. It's hyper, and everyone is expected to be in your life, and you can rely on she didn't grow up in that world. You don't have that in Pennsylvania. I mean, you have it, but people aren't connected by that. And so it was really beautiful. They welcomed her in such a nice way.
So what are you working on now?
Over the last couple of years, I've been podcasting under the Charlie Shrem Show. I got involved a little bit in the producing and acting world. I have been investing on behalf of a venture capital fund that a couple of great guys started, and they brought me on, and we invested over the last 3 years in 25 companies. So I'm kind of
space?
Yeah, it's kind of our little, I call it our little, it's all Bitcoin and crypto companies. You can go to druidventures.com and check out all the companies that we invested in, but it's kind of running a daycare. So I've been doing that over the last couple of years. And because of that, I'm working on my own startup that I kind of wanted to I felt some excitement about. And we're going to be building some really cool products for the Bitcoin industry in the future, but I'm in stealth about it because if people know what I'm doing, they're going to want to work on it too.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you that after we start recording. Cool. Two last questions, both personal, so feel free not to answer. First one, Bitcoin OG, are you rich?
It's a very good question.
Are you Bitcoin rich?
No. The problem is that when I got out of prison, I had none of the early Bitcoin that I had from the early days. I wasn't allowed to keep any of it. No.
Wow.
And I had to file financial reports even before and after the arrest for many years as part of a release plan. And I had to pay $1 million forfeiture. And I paid it. That first bull market, I made a couple of $1 million, and I was able to pay that off. And it was really great. What a great feeling I was able to do that. So my wife and I are
into the Bitcoin economy.
Got back into the Bitcoin economy. I wish I could say I never need to work again, but I think that I have a lot of friends who made a ton of wealth, and I don't think they have the happiness that I do. It's different. It's different because you need to have purpose in life. Always. I was semi-retired for many years. I was when you're, because you're never thinking about do I have enough money for 30 years or 40 years? You're always do I have enough money for the next 5 or 6 years? So I kind of just I was out of prison. I made money in the first bull market, and I was I'm just going to live in Florida. I'm going to get a boat. I'm not going to think about the future. I'm just going to
nice.
Yeah, it was a great year. We just literally lived on our boat for a year. And I worked kind of like half the time. Half the time it was only just like what I needed to do. But I saw my wife go through like a time where she had given up her whole acting career to take care of me. And the problem was is that she lost her purpose. And so when you lose that, it's a very demoralizing thing. When you lose your
Mm-hmm.
no purpose in life, like I don't know how housewives existed back in the old days. Like I know raising kids gives you purpose, and it is a beautiful thing, but it's like is it enough? Like
Do you have
especially as
kids?
the kids get older. No, we're not. We're we're both we're married 8 years now, so we're now at the age all of our friends are like getting pregnant. So it's like, but I think we're gonna adopt or do something maybe in a couple of years. But what I'm leading to is like her career came back with a vengeance. And now that she has her purpose back, she's a completely changed person. And I'm like, I never want to lose that purpose. And like if if you read and you study like Torah and stuff like you have to always be going through some tribulation. You just pray that it's not like a big one. Because the good parts of life are when you're going through some tribulation, you find moments of peace and contentness and happiness. And just like the idea of like reading a book with your wife and your dogs over a cup of coffee in the morning in the silence outside, because I'm thinking of like prison. I had the lowest of the low to compare every other moment to. And that is, I mean, that's the
It gives you
biggest gift I
perspective.
was ever. Yeah, it's the biggest gift. I'll cherish that till the day I die. It's the best. It's the
Wow.
best.
Thank you. Thank you for the candid answer. Okay, another question that I wanted to ask, and this is, I guess, something that interests me, like on a personal level. I doubt it will
Of course.
interest most of my listeners. What was your journey out of Yiddishkeit like? Like, why? Like, do you not believe in God, or did you just like get lazy because like Judaism is like very demanding? There's like so many things that you have to do all the time.
All right. Okay. So Yiddishkeit. I'll preface this with like have like
You don't have to answer, by the way, if you
no, it's
don't
all
feel
good. I have like a
comfortable.
copy of like Mesilat Yesharim right here. You know what I mean? So it's
So
like
you're basically you're on a journey.
every Jew is on a journey all the time. That's why they coined the term the wandering Jew. We're always on a journey. I always felt that like the Amish community does this thing where like they let they're even
Are these
more
from your
orthodox.
tractor driving days?
They're like more orthodox than the Jewish world is. They
Okay.
allow you to like leave and experience the world for a year and then decide if you're coming back. And if you come back, you have to live like them back the super orthodox way, or you're out forever. Um,
Okay. So you're
they do
going
that.
through your Amish phase.
No. So so that was part of it. That was, I definitely wanted to like experience the world more as I, was traveling around the world and I was a young kid. Another part of it was that the biggest issue, and I wouldn't have left because of this, but I fell in love with my wife, who is not Jewish, but she wanted to join our community. And my community doesn't accept converts. It's just the only like
What
Jewish
do you mean, like
community
the
in the world.
Syrian community
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Like, oh yeah, it's the biggest part of our community. It's like there's a famous
Really?
edict. It's on the wall of every synagogue, signed by my great grandfather and all the other rabbis, saying that anyone who they just don't accept converts. And there's famous stories of like the chief rabbis
Wow.
begging, giving like, oh, she converted for all the right reasons, and like, and so they don't
Wow.
accept. It's like there's a whole Facebook group of us who have like left because we married
I've
women who,
never
oh
heard of
yeah,
that. And when I read it in Mesris's book, I just thought for sure he got something wrong. Like he
no,
doesn't know what he's talking about.
no.
Wow.
We weren't allowed. I have no communication with my parents, cousins, grandparents, uncles, aunts.
Wow.
I was completely
That's so hard.
excommunicated from my life, from everyone, my
Wow.
whole childhood. The Charlie Shrem, as I'm writing and trying to write my book right now, like that early person died. I became a completely new person because everyone and every person I knew, and even like I haven't been back to my childhood bedroom since that moment. But I probably chose the worst time to leave because I grew up with a big family. I like packed up all my stuff on Rosh Hashanah, which is I knew they wouldn't be home, and I like just like took the train and left. And it was probably the worst, and I hurt a lot of people that way. But I was also hurt, so it's like it's a back and forth. So then but I grew up and I learned all these beautiful things, but I really struggled because there were things I just didn't see in practice of how people acted that really like I always felt that there was like a huge double standard, and I struggled with a lot of like things. It was like slow chiseling away at my belief, and I was had my own relationship with Hashem and God and stuff, but I slowly like tried to find other communities, other Jewish communities that would take us in. And the Chabad community was always on my side and always welcomed Courtney and I. And so when I went to prison, that was like the final straw. The community like completely put a nail in the coffin, like wrote me off for good.
Wow.
My parents, everyone
Like your
completely wrote
parents
me
won't
off.
take your calls?
The only way they'll take my calls now is if they pretend that my wife of 8 years doesn't exist. Like she doesn't exist in their worlds.
Wow.
Like even though she's, and she's been to Israel and stuff,
I
and
hate that side of Judaism. Like it's so not.
she loves Judaism more. Like she just had her first Pesach. She had her first, like we're
Like, where
more
did you guys
spiritual.
stay here when you were here in Pesach? Like you have family here? Or
No, we were here
friends?
for Pesach, but we were over there for Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends and extended family that it's like more of the non-religious side of the family accepts us.
Wow, that's really hard. I'm sorry.
No, so then I was like, like, how can I love this religion that doesn't love me back? Like it doesn't. And really the biggest nail in the coffin was I was like sitting in prison in this, like, they called it small group, which is like a circle of like you and other inmates. And you have to like, with a prison guard there, like you have to just like tell everyone like your whole confessional all the time, like every day. It's just like complete openness. And I was telling this story, and like the prison guard, he's like, he's like, you're assuming that your parents have to love you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Unconditional love exists. He goes, no, it doesn't. He goes, my parents don't love me. He goes, not all parents love their kids. It's not based in, that really hurt, because I assumed that my parents would always love me forever. And I was like, well, I guess a religion was chosen over me and stuff like that. And so I know it's not, I know now that it's obviously more complicated than that, and it's not as simple as that. But I was 23, 24 in prison, federal prison. Like our brains aren't fully developed at that point. Like I didn't really understand. I didn't have wisdom. Still don't have any wisdom, but I don't even have like a quarter of the wisdom, but whatever. And so I really was hurt by that. And like they wouldn't come and take care of me financially and visit me and stuff like that. So I had like a slow, but again, I didn't leave, like, I left orthodoxy. I didn't leave like the Jewish world. In fact, like the Jewish world embraced Courtney and I. Like when I was in prison, the Chabad movement, actually, what a beautiful way to give a Yizkor to Rabbi Lipskar, who just passed away, the Chabad rabbi. He was founder of the Aleph. He just passed away yesterday or 2 days ago. The founder of the Aleph Institute, which is an organization that takes care of people in prison. And you don't even have to be Jewish. You just have to love Judaism or just be Jewish. Most of our Jewish services in prison that were like supported by the Aleph Institute with a newsletter and food during holidays. And they sent like this Chabad rabbi in every Friday, which was amazing. But I would say at least half of the group weren't Jewish.
Wow.
It was like people who just wanted to live a Jewish life in prison, because what religion you are part of was the life that you lived. You couldn't be like you couldn't be not part of a religion. Like people had to join Native Americans, Buddhism, Catholic.
You have to just like
Islam,
pick something.
Yeah, you have to be with a group of people.
Wow.
And then in prison, you pay for protection, but you don't pay for protection in like the sense that like you're paying for someone to like not beat you up. There is that too, but you also financially split costs with a group of people. So you and like 10 other people will share meals, and we'll share those financial costs of like to not get beat up, but it's as a group. So you financially have to maintain, there's like almost like the common, it's like a homeowners association, if you will. Like we supported each other, but that was my Jewish group. So, wow. But they weren't all Jewish. It was like Jewish. It's a Muslim guys in there. One of the Catholic priests was in my Jewish group.
Wait, is like the food better with the Jewish group? Is that like what was the driving force?
Well, I was also very much a part of the Catholic group. I went to Catholic services every week, and I went to Buddhist services every week because they were I just liked being in the religious,
like the cultural
sphere.
experiences.
Yeah, and because it's like it's calm and peaceful. Like you go to the service, there's usually a cookie at the end. It's usually not. It's not like preaching. It's just like everyone together, and then really follow some loose religious service. Our rabbi, because we didn't have like the rabbi that wasn't consistently coming in all the time, our rabbi was one of the inmates, and he just happened to be the oldest Jewish guy on the compound.
What was he in for?
Rabbi Ira? That's not his real name, but he I'm trying to, I don't even remember. I'm trying to remember. It was, I don't even
Something
remember.
juicy? Okay.
No, it's never, there were some juicy stuff. Like I was with the Madoff group, like all the people who ran Bernie Madoff's organization. But getting back to like leaving religion, we've had like a whole kind of like journey through, and then being a part of the community here in Florida, and then the group that I work for right now, and stuff like that. So like, it's a shame that my family can't see the spiritual life that we have now. Because like as a kid, I never took time out of the day to study Torah, but now I do. Like it's a completely different world now. Are we Shomer Shabbat? Not in the current Orthodox sense, like I
But you
kind of like
recognize Shabbat, like
I
in
look
your
at
way,
religion,
I guess.
yeah. I look at religion now as like a buffet. I like to take the stuff that I like, and then
My
I
dad
know.
would have a heart attack if he heard you right now. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. And I think there's something really nice about that as well. Like something
And at least I'm
nicer
there.
even. Yeah.
I could be nowhere.
Yeah. No, you have your relationship with God. I love it. I think it's
When we moved down to the town that we live in now, the small town in Florida, we were literally one of the only Jewish people. So I was like, oh, we have to represent now, because like we're the only. It was like me and the Chabad rabbi, and like.
So now you're hosting like chaburas at your house on Tuesday
definitely
nights, like beer and chillent.
They do a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, I actually the only one who makes chillent around here. And my neighbor found out he was the president of the Reform synagogue. So he invited me over, and he goes, only if you make the chillin'. So I'm like there carrying the crock pot. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in Brooklyn again, but I'm in like South Florida.
Your mom would be proud, I'm sure.
I had a good recipe. But yeah, I mean, that's the story. I mean, the story, you read the book, there's a lot of deep layers involved.
I'm sure.
But I live the best life. And I'm very rich in the sense of like, very rich in years. Like I look back at what we've done in the limited years that we've lived so far, and it's like, wow, like lived such an amazing life so far. Everything else from this point is gravy.
Are you still involved like with the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, very much so. But I kind of like do my own thing. I'm not affiliated. Like religion, I'm unaffiliated now.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming on and for having this very candid conversation with me. It was very, very engaging, and I looking forward to sharing it with our audience. For those who are looking to connect with you and tune in to the Charlie Shrem Show and Untold Stories, I don't know if they're two separate podcasts or one and the same. Where could they find your content, and where are you most active? I know you're very active on X.
My name is hard to spell, so that's why I got untoldstories.com. It's an easy to remember domain name, but it's the Charlie Shrem Show. Untold Stories is kind of like the media brand. You can either go to charlieshrem.com or search it wherever you get your audio, or go to my website. My website's fun. You can see the trailers of all the movies that we're doing and all the cool, funky crypto projects that we got going on. And that's really it. If you email me, I have a newsletter that I just write, but it's just for people. I don't have a sign up. You have to email me first, and then I'm adding you on there. That's really it.
Awesome. Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Code. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and to tune in again next week for more fun and insightful conversation.